This dark voice came into my head that wasn't my own and was telling me that, you know, there was no reason to live now, and yeah, there's no point in carrying on, basically.
This is James, everybody.
Hi, James.
Hello. You all right?
Lovely
Nice to
man.
meet you, okay?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, you're going to be sitting there, so take a seat. How does it feel to be sort of sat in front of this mirror?
It's kind of uncomfortable. Yeah, it's not normal to have a conversation with yourself, definitely.
What do you mean by uncomfortable? Tell me more about that.
I find it really hard to answer questions about myself. Like, a lot of people will say that I'm quite chilled out and like confident is something that people will say a lot, but yeah, I do a lot of thinking. Yeah, underneath. So, yeah.
So James, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Midlands, in like Worcestershire. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere. It was, yeah, it was a pretty good childhood, really. Like, I had every opportunity. Yeah, I grew up in the countryside, like surrounded by woods and forests. And I've got two parents. I've got a brother, older brother who's married. He's got a child. He's always been there for me. He's always supported me. Yeah, and I'm just super lucky, really, that that I have him as a brother, definitely. And like, looking back, it's hard to say like exactly when I started struggling with mental health, or when I had bad mental health, or I basically jumped into the first job that I could get. Yeah, it was just not something that interested me, or, you know, particularly, I just didn't like it, basically. Like, I always wanted to have a job where I was actually passionate about it, and I wanted that to be the foundation that I built my life upon, because otherwise it just felt a bit insecure. It felt like I was building my life on being unhappy, essentially. I used to cycle to work, and I used to go up this like little drive, and I would cycle to work by like turning left, and then turning right. It would be looking like to the mountains and things, and that's where I wanted to be, really. And it was just like a really agonizing decision I'd have to make every morning to like go to work instead of going in a direction that I wanted to go.
What else was going on in your life around that time?
Yeah, I was living in a little cottage in North Wales. That's where I've lived for like the past decade. And it's where I studied and everything as well. Yeah, and I was living with my partner and a couple of friends, and yeah, the relationship basically just started to deteriorate. And then we went into COVID, and yeah, and that's when my relationship ended. Yeah, and that was really difficult, because, you know, we'd been in a relationship for about 7 years, and, you know, we're about to buy a house together and that type of thing. So it just felt like a massive rejection of, you know, everything that I was, basically. The sense of that time in my life was that I didn't have control over anything. I very much felt like I was a victim to my circumstances, really. You know, I didn't see a way out of the job I was in. My partner had just left me, and I also had this running injury as well, so I couldn't run, and running had always been something that was like quite key to my identity, I would have said. I'd run marathons and ultra marathons and that type of thing, and yeah, I just couldn't access it anymore. So yeah, it was just really difficult, and I felt really closed in. Getting outdoors and moving was, you know, a big part of how I expressed who I am. I felt like I was lacking, basically. I felt like I needed to be someone else in order to be happy, essentially.
How often were you sort of having these thoughts and feelings?
Pretty constant, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, every day, certainly. I mean, for me, I think it felt like I was trying to swim upriver, and no matter how hard I tried, I never really got anywhere. You know, actually talking to anyone was really difficult because it felt like I was hiding something. I felt completely alien and just cut off from everyone, you know, whether I was in company or not.
And what was the lowest moment for you, James?
Yeah, I mean, the lowest moment was Christmas Eve that year when we went into lockdown. I was going to go back to my parents. My brother was going to be there, and then this lockdown happened. I was just stuck in Wales on my own. I'd moved into the house that I was supposed to buy with my previous partner, and it was just, so I was just isolated and just stuck on my own with my own thoughts, being injured and injured and isolated, and just feeling like anxious and depressed. And I had all of this pressure that I was putting on myself, and I'd been injured for a couple of years already, and it was a really difficult situation. And so I just decided that if I was going to be stuck in Wales, I was going to try and run around Snowdon, which is something that I had done previously. I'd done when I was younger. So I thought, you know, like, this injury can't go on any longer. Like, it must be in my head.
And before you sort of set out on the run, what was the pressure you were putting on yourself about that run?
I was basically trying to realign with the person that I thought I was, which was someone, you know, that was active and, you know, just did the things that I wanted to do. When I was in that mindset, you know, I was really desperate. And I really needed to try, and, you know, I was already trying really hard, but I felt like I just needed to do that a little bit more. And so, yeah, I set off to do this run, and it started well. And then obviously the injury flared up. And and once the injury flared up, you know, all of my, like, I'd attached my self-worth to making it around this run. And when I didn't make it, you know, I just felt completely worthless. And, you know, I really, really spiraled in my mental health then. You know, I really beat myself up, and yeah, it resulted in having suicidal thoughts at that point. There was, like, this dark voice came into my head that wasn't my own, and was telling me that, you know, there was no reason to live now, and you know, no one's going to miss you, and yeah, there's no point in carrying on, basically. At that point, I reached out to my brother, actually, and I didn't tell him that I had suicidal thoughts, but I told him that I'd had, like, a really dark time, and that was quite a relief, just to say that. Like, I didn't admit how far it went at that point, but I mean, it was just a few text messages, basically, in that instance, but it was enough to know that I wasn't, you know, struggling on my own, and, you know, I was loved, basically, you know, because the voice had been telling me that I was unlovable and I was worthless. Like, when you actually say it out loud that you're struggling and you're having a difficult time, it just makes it so much easier to deal with somehow. So, yeah.
And what was it like waking up on Christmas Day that year?
I remember waking up, and it was, you know, a beautiful day. It was like, you know, Bluebird Day. And I was so grateful to be alive. And, you know, my mum sent me this little Christmas tree through the postbox, and, you know, I got all these presents delivered to me, and we had a Skype call and with my family. And and I found out I was going to be an uncle, and it was just an incredible day. And it seems kind of crazy that it would be such a quick turnaround, but I was just really grateful. That was the overwhelming feeling of the day.
And kind of beyond that, how has your mental health improved from there?
Yeah, so on Christmas Day, I basically decided that I was going to make a change, and I was just going to let go of all expectations that I'd put on myself, just let all of that go, and just prioritise on looking after myself, making sure I slept enough, and I started introducing myself back into exercise and, you know, talking to people. You know, I had more conversations with my brother, and yeah, that was life-changing, really. I couldn't believe that I hadn't done it before. When you can be vulnerable with someone and talk about mental health, I think it takes the relationship to a deeper level in some sense. It means you have emotional support, and that is completely invaluable, really. It means you can trust someone with anything.
What would you say to your brother if he were here now?
I think I'd say thank you, just for being there generally, and inspiring me as well. Definitely, you know, my main inspiration in life. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm very grateful, and I love you.
Hi, brother.
No way.
Yeah. How you doing?
What?
Freddie, if you want to come round, you can.
Yeah, I certainly do.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Yeah, good.
Oh, well done. Oh, you smashed that.
Thanks.
Suicide. It's a big word, and you know, I think it's a big thing to say, but
Yeah, actually talking about it was, yeah.
yeah. And like, one of the other things that I'm like super proud of you doing was, you know, after that, taking the decision to sort of really challenge yourself and set out to walk the coast of Britain as well. And that, I feel like that decision that you made was a real sort of like turning point in kind of reclaiming your sense of self and self-worth, I think.
Yeah, when I was walking, I came across someone who was suicidal themselves. They were in a dangerous position, and they were about to end their lives. I went over to them, and I asked them, "Are you okay?" And yeah, she said she wasn't. She said she was suicidal. And then we had a conversation, and luckily I was able to stop her from making that decision. Oh, that caught me. And, yeah, sorry. And then, you know, it was really difficult to be in that position where I felt responsible for saving someone's life, but I felt this overwhelming grief as well at the same time, for the fact that I had felt that way myself. It's really sad that someone could get to that point where, you know, we can't have these conversations, and no one should get to that point. It's so unnatural.
I think it just speaks to the power of conversation, really.
Yeah, that is incredible. Such an amazing thing to have done.
Bring it in.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Oh, always.